Imagine yourself around 12,000 years ago, when our ancestors began to write one of the most fascinating chapters in human history. The world was changing. The last ice age was coming to an end, bringing a milder climate conducive to the development of communal living. This period, which historians call the Holocene, marked the beginning of a true revolution in the way humans lived and organized themselves, a transformation so profound that its effects still resonate in our society today. For tens of thousands of years before this moment, our ancestors lived as hunter-gatherers, constantly moving in search of food and shelter. They developed impressive skills in observing nature, learning to identify edible plants, predicting climate changes through the patterns of the stars, and understanding animal behavior. This deep knowledge of the natural environment was crucial to the survival of our species and continues to be valued by traditional peoples to this day. Hunter-gatherer groups were typically small, consisting of 20 to 30 people, usually extended families united by bonds of kinship and friendship. They developed sophisticated technologies for their time, such as spears, harpoons, and bows, and arrows, which allowed them to hunt more efficiently. Women, often responsible for gathering, developed extraordinary knowledge of medicinal and edible plants, contributing significantly to the group's survival. The nomadic life required a deep understanding of natural cycles. The groups needed to know exactly when certain fruits ripened, when animals migrated, and where to find water during dry seasons. This knowledge was passed down orally from generation to generation through stories, songs, and rituals that kept the group's collective memory alive. In different parts of the globe, these small groups began to notice that some seeds, when they fell to the ground, gave rise to new plants. This revolutionary discovery occurred independently in several regions over hundreds or even thousands of years. In the fertile plains between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, in the region we now know as the Middle East, entire families began to settle in one place, giving rise to the first permanent human settlements. The process of domesticating plants was gradual and required a deep understanding of natural cycles. The first farmers learned to select the seeds of the most productive and resilient plants, initiating a process of genetic modification that would continue for generations. They discovered that different crops grew better in different seasons and developed agricultural calendars based on astronomical and climatic observations. The transition to agriculture was not just a change in how food was obtained, it was a complete transformation in the way of human life. People had to learn to build permanent shelters, store food for times of scarcity, and develop new tools adapted to agricultural work. The first stone sickles, the first baskets for carrying grains, and the first pottery for storing food emerged. The Nile River Valley witnessed a similar process. There, periodic floods left the soil rich in nutrients, allowing the first agricultural communities to flourish. People learned to work together, building complex irrigation systems and developing farming techniques that would be passed down through generations. The first Egyptian farmers developed a sophisticated calendar based on the floods of the Nile, dividing the year into 3 seasons of 4 months each. The inundation, Akhet, when the waters covered the fields with rich, nutritious silt. The planting pere, when the waters receded and the seeds were planted. And the harvest, Shemu, when the golden grains were gathered under the scorching desert sun. In the Fertile Crescent region, an area stretching from present-day Egypt to the Persian Gulf, the first farmers domesticated wild wheat and barley, transforming them into the crops we know today. This domestication process was not quick. It took thousands of years of observation, trial and error, and farmers had to learn to select the best seeds, understand the growth cycles of plants, and develop the proper tools for cultivation. The domestication of animals occurred alongside agriculture, beginning with the dog around 15,000 years. Thus humans gradually domesticated sheep, goats, pigs, and cattle. Each of these domestications brought new challenges and opportunities. Dogs helped with hunting and the protection of settlements, while sheep and goats provided wool, milk, and meat. Cattle not only provided food, but could also be used to pull plows, revolutionizing agriculture. With the development of agriculture and animal husbandry, settlements grew and transformed into the first villages. In Çatalhöyük, in present-day Turkey, around 8,000 years ago, a community of approximately 5,000 people already lived in mud brick houses built side by side, like a human beehive. The houses were accessed via openings in the roof, and people moved through the city by walking across the roofs of the houses, a unique architectural solution that provided protection from predators and invaders. The inhabitants of Çatalhöyük not only cultivated their food and raised animals, but also developed sophisticated crafts. Archaeologists have found evidence of weaving workshops where sheep wool was turned into textiles, tool production areas where skilled craftsmen worked stone and bone, and even early signs of metallurgy with small copper objects being hammered into useful shapes. The walls of the houses in Çatalhöyük were decorated with elaborate paintings depicting scenes of hunting, wild animals, and what seemed to be religious rituals. These paintings give us a unique window into the spiritual and cultural life of these early urban dwellers. They show that, even in their infancy, cities were not just places to live and work, but also centers of artistic and religious expression. Life in a community brought new challenges and lessons. People needed to develop rules for cohabitation, create systems of exchange and sharing, and find ways to resolve conflicts. The first leaders emerged, along with the first communal rituals and the first collective artistic expressions. The need to record important information, such as the quantities of stored food or the exchanges made between different groups, led to the development of the first counting systems and, later, writing. Around 5,000 years ago, some villages had already transformed into true cities. Uruk in Mesopotamia became one of the first major urban centers in history, housing an estimated population of 40,000 inhabitants. The city covered an area of approximately 550 hectares and was protected by a wall 9 kilometers long. In its center, massive pyramid-shaped temples called ziggurats stood as symbols of the power and social organization achieved by that civilization. It was in Uruk that one of the first known writing systems, cuneiform script, emerged. Initially developed to record commercial transactions with small symbols impressed on soft clay tablets, the script quickly expanded to record laws, stories, and poems. The famous Epic of Gilgamesh, one of the oldest literary works in human history, was preserved on clay tablets found in the ruins of the city. This epic is not only an exciting tale of adventure and friendship, but also a profound reflection on mortality, power, and the meaning of civilization. Society in Uruk was highly specialized, with priests, administrators, craftsmen, traders, and farmers performing specific roles. The temples were not only religious centers, but also served as economic institutions, storing and redistributing grain, organizing collective labor, and even offering the first banking services in history. Meanwhile, in the Indus Valley, in present-day Pakistan, other impressive cities were developing. Mohenjo-daro and Harappa, built around 4,500 years ago, featured surprisingly modern urban planning. The streets were laid out in a regular grid, with advanced drainage systems running beneath the pavement. The houses were constructed with standardized bricks, produced on a large scale, and many had their own bathrooms and wells. These cities of the Indus Valley are remarkable not only for their architectural sophistication, but also for their apparent social equality. Unlike other ancient civilizations where palaces and temples dominated the urban landscape, in Mohenjo-daro, the residences were relatively uniform in size and quality. This suggests a society with fewer inequalities than its contemporaries in Mesopotamia and Egypt. In China, along the Yellow River, agricultural communities settled more than 7,000 years ago, developing their own techniques for cultivating rice and millet. Around 4,000 years ago, the first Chinese dynasties emerged. Chinese civilization developed its own distinctive traditions, including the ideographic writing system, which is still in use today, and a sophisticated tradition of bronze and jade work. The Chinese were also pioneers in several technologies. They developed advanced irrigation techniques, including the use of canals and reservoirs to control river waters. Chinese metallurgy was particularly advanced, producing bronze of a quality that would not be matched in other parts of the world for many centuries. This was not a linear story, or one that was the same across the globe. While some regions developed large urban centers, others maintained more traditional ways of life, equally rich in knowledge and perfectly adapted to their local realities. In the Americas, for example, different groups developed complex agricultural systems over thousands of years, domesticating crops such as maize, potatoes, and cassava, which today feed much of the world's population. The peoples of the Americas also developed innovative agricultural techniques. In what is now the Amazon, ancient populations created terra preta, an artificially enriched soil that remains fertile even after thousands of years. On the slopes of the Andes, they developed terrace systems that allowed cultivation on steep terrain and food preservation techniques that took advantage of the cold mountain climate. The remnants left by these early civilizations, stone tools, pottery, cave paintings, monumental structures, tell us stories of innovation, perseverance, and collaboration. Each artifact found is a window into a past that, though distant in time, continues to teach us about the importance of community, adaptation, and the constant pursuit of knowledge. This is our shared history, a journey that began tens of thousands of years ago and continues to this day. It shows us how the ability to live in community, to innovate, and to transform our environment sustainably has always been one of humanity's greatest strengths. By studying these ancient civilizations, we not only learn about our past, but also find inspiration and wisdom to face the challenges of the present and build a better future for the generations to come.